What up, NUS? Welcome to Funkytown with Kim.
And Bev,
You're listening into Radio Pulse.
the sound of NUS. What'd you do this weekend?
Well, I basically laid around in bed and popped Panadols like a druggie. Yeah, not the best of long weekends. How about you?
I went out on Saturday and that was pretty good because I finally have a good break from school. And I went down to Clark Quay, so you saw these people dressing up, and that was just like, whoa, that was so cool. Like there was a Cruella de Vil, there were people dressed up in Pampers, there were people in superheroes, people in slutty outfits, of course,
Of
in,
course.
in scary outfits, people with masks on, people rollerblading around. Yeah, it was just like it was just crazy, but it was so fun at the same time. It was good to get out and have a bit of entertainment Saturday night.
Well, I'm glad you had a good time at Clark Quay. I wish I could even walk out of my house, but I guess when I was in bed, I kind of entertained myself by watching X Factor, YouTube videos, and it's like really nice to see how talented some music stars really are. I mean, okay, other than the fact that Justin Bieber came from YouTube, but then again, you still have really awesome artists like I think the Wanted are pretty good, and Carmen. They also came from YouTube.
Like it's kind of interesting seeing how they have actually transitioned from YouTube stars to big stars now, and how, I mean, sometimes you just wonder what these talent contests for. You know, you have X Factor, you have
Idol.
you have the one with
The Voice.
The Voice, yeah, that's the one with Adam Levine turning around with who, you know. But it's just kind of interesting seeing how that has actually transformed the music scene as well. YouTube is a big part of it. I mean, it used to be just MySpace, and now YouTube is taking the world by storm. And in the past, we used to have talent time. You know, my mom was talking about how they would have to vote, sending in postcards to vote for your favorite singer, and even then, they were just saying covers. They won't come out with their own songs, so it was pretty limited. But at the same time, I guess that was the form of singing competitions then what we have now is pretty different. I mean, we used to have Singapore Idol. We had that for
Three seasons.
3 seasons?
Yeah, 3 seasons.
I thought
it lasted that long.
Yeah, I know. I was pretty impressed by that. But even then, I'm not sure how big they still are right now.
I just think that music is turning into a very lucrative thing. Like in the past, you would never think of being a musician as a proper career. Like it would just be something on the side. But I think the fact that music has become a very important part of a lot of people's lives. So it's nice to think that in the past, when it was difficult to become a musician, you have people like, you have classics like the Beatles, you have ABBA, you have Queen, and they managed to make it big despite the fact that music wasn't that easy to be successful in. It wasn't that easy to get fans. It wasn't really easy to publicize themselves, but they still managed to become stars of the world.
I mean, in Singapore, you don't really get a lot of stars because I think it's just pretty difficult, especially if you want to make it big in the English music scene, because you have competition in the US, you have competition in the UK, Australia, and if you want to succeed, you've got to cater to the markets which are a bit more accessible, probably across the border in Malaysia or in China or in Taiwan or Hong Kong. It's pretty limited, but even then we still have quite a few names there. I mean, Stephanie Sun has actually made it pretty big in China. Apparently, when we were there on a holiday many years ago, her face was plastered on iced lemon tea bottles, so that was pretty cool because my sister was actually listening to it at that time, and she wanted to practice her Chinese, so we started listening to her, and she sounded pretty good. I mean, and then she had some English songs as well. I don't know how many of them were hers, but she used Tori Amos a lot because she really liked her style, and that was pretty good. And there's Corinne May as well. She's done.
I love Corinne May.
Yeah, I know. She's got loads of stuff coming out, and she's still pretty big in this market. I'm not sure how many people actually still listen to Stephanie Sun, but I think these singers also actually have cemented their place in Singapore when they actually participate in National Day songs and they actually write it. And
like Tanya Chua.
Yeah, she was pretty cool actually. I think she's got a concert in December for the English audience,
okay.
and the Chinese audience as well. And we sing it every year. I mean, not all of us, but I think it's pretty cool how National Day songs have become some sort of identity for us. I mean,
like everyone knows the lyrics. Even
Yeah.
if you don't know, you know the tune.
and especially when you're in primary 5, you had to do those actions as
Oh
well because
yeah.
you
You got free tickets.
So that was actually quite cool. I mean, I know when my cousin's overseas and she thinks about Singapore, she just thinks about the song sometimes. And you're like, yeah, let's sing it. You know, I'm like, okay, it's a bit embarrassing, but that's what the hell, you know, let's just sing it.
It's nice that these NDP songs have become such a tradition to us. People still remember it and people still hold it close to their hearts. I mean, think about it. Like I can't from the top of my head think of any local Singaporean artist from my dad's day or like even from the 90s. It's really difficult to think of those. But in terms of NDP songs, you can just think of the ones that were from like ages ago.
I mean, when it came to the 90s, I think they were more like the indie scene came up in Singapore. And I was actually watching a movie quite a while ago. It's called 12 Stories, and the band The Observatory were actually played a lot of songs there, and they were really actually. I think since then I bought the CD, and I was really impressed.
Ooh.
Yeah, with their songs. I mean, they're actually a defunct band now. I've also started listening to a few other bands as well. I mean, they're not that big in Singapore, but I mean, I think they're slowly catching on.
I think that's another thing, the whole indie thing.
Yeah, because you have scenes
Yeah.
like people actually go to play open mic sessions, and they get found.
Like Timber. as
Yeah, they have
well,
Timber,
yeah.
they have Pigeonhole, which is pretty cool as well. And I think it helps these artists actually make their mark in Singapore. I mean, I had a group of friends who I knew from school, and they actually performed on last Saturday. They're the Sam Willows, and they were playing, and I think they had a huge turnout actually, which is pretty cool.
Actually, they're pretty big. Like even my senior was telling me about their album being released
Yep.
that day. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was just much easier for local bands to make their mark now. I mean, in compared to the past, where I think parents used to be less supportive of their kids chasing something that didn't seem so realistic or practical in a sense. But I think it's really nice that we have these people to represent us like musically, and we're just not like some clones that are just gonna subject ourselves to the top 40 hits from America. And you know, we can still have our own musical identity.
Speaking of which, there's another avenue for local bands to actually meet the local audience is through radio stations. And I think 98.7 FM has this home section on the weekends where they actually invite local artists, or they actually play local music on the radio for people to actually listen to them. And I think that's really good because you get more people listening and finding out about the local scene, and it's not just
It's just like a touch back to home instead of just being so like overwhelmed with like the international music scene.
I guess that makes sense because I mean we have so many stations to listen to, and it's just so many songs and so many artists, and I think it's a bit overwhelming with all these, you know.
Exactly. There's like concerts every other day, and then there's like an album release like twice a week, and there's just tons of songs you can download online. So it's just a little difficult. There's just so much music in this present time. But I personally feel that in the past, like it was just a lot more clean cut. You know the good artists from the bad, and then you know which albums to invest your money in, because albums in those days were expensive.
There's the whole globalization and things have changed, but I think also with these different music acts actually coming up and different bands coming up, I guess it reaches out to different personalities, and you know, maybe people might feel a bit more connected or feel special because, you know, I so can relate to this artist. I like his style, you know, it's not just the mainstream anymore,
Right.
which could have been like in the past. But I think with what's going on right now, you have people coming up, and because it's so easy to get the airtime, it gets a bit diluted, but at the same time, you have this personal thing. Once you find that particular band that you really like, you know, you can actually say, hey, you like that style, and you can stick to it. But I guess with people liking all these different musics, you know.
Actually, I think another factor that contributed to this was the fact that it's so much easier to find new music now.
Yeah.
Like in those days, it'd be like playing in your garage and then in your basement, and then your parents yelling at you to stop and study. But now it's just those people are the ones making it big, and they have like all these like inspiring stories to tell now that they are actually big musicians that got picked up by record labels. Like when you think about all these new and upcoming artists, like they're super young. You have like Grayson Chance, who was 12 when he was discovered by Ellen, and then now you have like like 10-year-olds on X Factor, but they do have really good voices. Don't there's no doubt about that. But it's just they're a little too young to be breaking out of into the music scene. I think the music scene is a very mature scene. It's a very mature industry, and you really need to have a lot of life experience to be actually successful in it. And I feel like they're being thrown out too fast, too early.
I think that's what they were saying about Britney as well, because she developed so quickly, and I think she had this meltdown early in her 20s, and then she shaved her head, and but I think that she's doing really well now. But still, at the same time, I think there's a lot of pressure for people in the entertainment industry to do all these things, and I think at a certain age, there's got to be a limit of how much they can actually do. I guess it's funny to think about how things have actually changed along the way. I mean, you think about Michael Jackson as well. In the past, things were really did well for him, but God bless his soul. There's a bit of stress for him in the end, but I think just noting the changes in our lives then and now, there's a lot of pressure still, but at the same time, I think we're just trying to grow up so fast.
Yeah, and I just think there's a whole lot more expectation for kids to maintain like a certain image of not that of a kid, but of a young adult or a full-fledged one for that matter. Like you see 14-year-olds and they're trying to drink and they're trying to wear loads of makeup and like wear slutty outfits, and they're only 14, and I'm thinking to myself like, this wasn't me when I was a kid. But that's what the music industry does to you, I think. So for next week, we could actually explore how it's like being a kid in today's society, and then compare that to our parents. Like what kind of expectations we have to be a kid, and what kind of pressures we face in our daily childhood. So that's all the time we have for today.
Before we get any older, this has been Bev
and Kim.
Thanks for listening to Radio Pulse, the sound of NUS.